Welcome to Discover Recovery. I'm Rokelle Lerner, and I'm sitting alongside my co-host, Dan Griffin. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Rokelle, how are you?
I'm good. Dan, today, let's just jump into the topic of relationship.
All right, let's do it.
You know, Valentine's Day is right around the corner, and that holiday evokes strong emotions in people, ranging from everything from ecstasy to elation to excitement to absolute dread.
Dread. Yes.
Grief.
That's a good word.
Grief, pain. I mean, the range is so broad. And I would like to just start by talking about love. Can we talk about love for a minute?
Let's talk about love.
Okay, let's talk about love. You know, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know about you, but the falling in love part, absolute heaven, absolute ecstasy.
Love it.
You know, although I have worked with women who said they've never fallen in love, they've just stepped in it a little bit. But for me, the falling in love part was ecstasy. It's just too bad that feeling of bliss doesn't sustain. It wanes with the stress and strain of life. I don't know, that's been my experience.
Absolutely. We hate to think of relationships as taking work. We'd like to think that high is going to last for a long time.
I'm with you. And, you know, the ones who put that very best aren't psychologists. You know, they're country western singers.
Amen.
You know, with some of the lyrics like, how can I miss you if you won't go away? Or, you know, I'm so miserable without you, it's like having you here. Things like that. And we have romanticized Valentine's Day and relationship to such an extent. I mean, I work with men and women on their relationships, and I don't know, there's this an illusion still of you'll meet someone, you fall in love, and it's happily ever after.
Yeah. And then the pressure that men and women feel as Valentine's Day approaches, when it's here, and even after it leaves, about what am I supposed to do? What if I don't have someone? What if I do have someone? It's just amazing, the pressure and stress that people put themselves through in order to make Valentine's Day perfect, as if one time a year is then enough for the relationship.
Exactly. And, you know, what we do and I can relate to this.
Oh,
you know, sometimes I've asked women what their favorite fairy tale is, and that turns out to be their romantic script, like Cinderella and Snow White and Sleeping Beauty. And I just want to say that, you know, our minds tend to block out whatever is painful. And in, you know, fairy tale stories, all we see are these princesses, you know, finding their princesses, plural princi, finding their prince and living happily ever after. And we don't see, like, for instance, Cinderella comes from a very abusive family with an abusive stepmother and stepsisters.
That's right, absolutely.
And
there's some darkness in these fairy tales.
There's some darkness, but, you know, that was my script romantically. I was raised in a clinically interesting family and thought relationship was going to solve everything, and went to look for my prince. And it was work. I thought falling in love would do it.
Yeah.
And the work involved, actually, relationship brings up everything. It brings up all the stuff you haven't looked at, I think. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's interesting, too, as I think about my generation and some of the folks that are younger. I'm watching so many of my friends go through divorce. And it's after 2-3 years, because this idea that you actually have to work to establish the foundation of marriage, people think, like, if we don't have it after a year, then, you know, it's over. Where I had wise people tell me, give it 5 years, you know, before you can really have a sense of the foundation that you're going to have. So I think with the addiction to the fairy tale has also come the addiction to, like, the falling in love piece has to define the relationship.
Exactly. And I want it, and I want it now, and I shouldn't have to take work.
Right.
And I know, you know, what it takes. What does it take to really show up in the room with someone day to day, body, mind, and spirit?
It takes a lot.
You know, I know in my life, I look for what I call exits, ways to avoid intimacy.
Absolutely.
You know,
and we need time. We actually need to give ourselves permission to not just be awash in intimacy all the time, to give ourselves some space. You know,
Boy, where were you when I needed you?
The
Absolutely.
proverbial man cave.
I know.
Gotta love the man cave.
And there's woman cave too, actually.
Oh, I bet.
But we do it very differently.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is that the shopping mall?
That's a shopping mall,
Yeah.
right? That's soap operas.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah, sure. Those Harlequin romances.
Oh.
Are those still out?
Don't put them down.
I love them.
But
love 'em.
exits, exits are anything we use to escape intimacy. So TV can be an exit.
Yeah.
You know. Work was mine.
Yeah.
Work was mine, and I'm still recovering from, the work kind of addiction. And addiction, when addiction's in a relationship, and I don't know about you, but I define addiction as anything that takes too large a share of your life.
I think that's an awesome definition of addiction. I've also heard, when it's a chronic neglect of self in favor of something else. But just that idea that the self is lost in the chaos of whatever else is happening.
Yeah, I really think that definition's accurate.
Yeah.
And I know with me and my work addiction, everything took second place to that. When there's addiction in a relationship, I know for me, and it's embarrassing to say, but when work was number one, nobody, not any lover, husband, wife, or child, I think can compete with that seductive pull of addiction. And for me, work was on my mind all the time.
Yeah, and it was really interesting for me. So being in recovery now from alcohol and other drug addiction for almost 19 years, I had that first moment where it was like, that first addiction was, you know what, give me a drink, give me something else. But that's the thing that I need in order to be able to live in the fairy tale. Because everything else was just too painful and just too disconnected from what I thought it should be. But what's been fascinating for me has been the process of discovery of some of the other ways that I, as you said, exit, the escapes, those other pieces that kind of can take over.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how subtle and insidious it can be.
So now that the drug and alcohol is not there.
Right. Then, and I think that's one of the perceptions we have sometimes in our society is like, oh my gosh, I've got this spouse or this family member who's just really struggling with their addiction. If they would just get sober, and then they get sober, and that's an absolutely essential and wonderful thing.
Absolutely.
And down the road, paying attention for some of these other pieces. Really important. Really important.
And I so resonate with that. When a wife or a husband sends their beloved to treatment, the expectation is then they're going to come home and everything's going to be fixed.
That's right. They're fixed.
And I think so many of the folks I work with don't realize that after the drug and alcohol is gone, it's almost worse. It's almost worse in the relationship than before.
Well, right, because as I had it explained to me early on, is when you have a couple coming together, they learn to dance a certain way.
Yep.
Then you take the dance partner and you teach them a completely different moves, but the other one didn't go to the dancing school with them. So they're still doing the foxtrot while the other one's like now doing the tango or something.
Right.
I don't even dance, so I don't know if those are accurate at all.
Oh, well, I think that...
Would that be on Who Can Dance or whatever that show is?
I think that would be accurate, and we can teach each other in the studio if you'd like. But what I think is that the expectations when someone comes home, like you, I don't know if you were married at the time, but boy, I know for so many folks that I work with, the expectations after treatment get bizarre. Yeah. Absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
I've worked with people who, right after treatment, they think, well, I'm going to go to AA, and now that I'm sober, and I'm going to meet somebody else who's sober, and we're going to dance into the sunlight together. Oops!
It's certainly not a dance. You might go into the sunlight, but
but not a dance.
Not necessarily dancing. I think that's one of the things that I don't know that we can say this too much in our society. I mean, Valentine's Day is about love, and love in itself is such an incredible thing. Mm-hmm. It's such a wonderful thing. But our tendency is to want it to be so much, and want it, like you said, that fairy tale is such an awesome description. But it's also this idea of but what does it take for us to take care of ourselves so that we can have love in our lives? more than once a year.
More than once a year.
You know, I mean, it's like,
Right.
okay, we got Valentine's Day and then we got our anniversary.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the time we'll be strangers. No, I don't. It's a little cynical, but, you know, it happens a lot. And in addicted family systems, it really, I've noticed, you know, it's like the family will do everything it can to marshal its resources on the holidays to somehow pretend that things are not as bad. Like, oh, well, we can meet this holiday, so we're okay.
So we're okay. And, you know, as one who grew up in an addictive system, absolutely. And as the firstborn, I made sure. I really helped that the holidays had to be okay. Although you peel away that veneer, and
it's
a lot of pain under there.
Absolutely.
So you take that to your relationships and think you can do a good performance sometimes.
That's right.
I think.
Because you're stuck in the script,
Right.
but you want, you know, the want for things to be different is so different than the ability for things to be different.
And, you know, I love the quote that, you know, love is all that matters. It's also not enough to make a relationship work.
Oh, man. How many times have I heard that from the men that I've been working with, from their partners, you know, talking about love is not enough.
Well, I'll tell you, we want to talk more about this, and we want to hear from you on that subject. So we'll be taking your calls. We'll be right back.